Listen here and listen close. I understand Bloodborne is by no means a new game, but to be completely honest it is one I've been putting off for a lot of years. While the gothic architecture mixed with an insane amount of blood during combat, as well as the enemy design conceptually should be a home run for piquing my interest, I just didn't get it. This video is more of a self-correction to my mindset on this game, having played it 10 years after release, and having played it from Soft's sister games such as Dark Souls and Sekiro, I can now fully appreciate this game in all of its 30 FPS glory. However, regarding the lore, I am not one of your YouTube prophets to be dwelling on item descriptions of every blood-covered, fungus-ridden shoe. But as this is a role-playing game, I will offer some personal insights into how I interpret the game. That's enough exposition for now. I instead would like to move on into a brief parable. A young hunter, intoxicated by his bloodlust, goes down to hellish depths in order to face his next victim. He accidentally summons help and immediately has him murdered. The hunter walks up to a putrid beast in the distance, noticing it's immobile, and starts to beat the ever-loving fuck out of it. The name, Abriatus, daughter of the cosmos, appears, a horrid amalgamation of limbs with a face no mother would love. And despite the bullshit hitbox, the hunter proceeds, trying his best to defeat this abominable foe. He craves the fight, the slaughter, the possibility of success so clear in his mind. He's dead. He dies again, and again, and again, until he decides to make a brief dishonorable mention about the worst boss in Bloodborne. In hindsight, I can't with full confidence say that Abriatus is a worse boss than Rom, as Rom made me drop the game for 6 months before I even looked at it again. But both of these bosses, whilst for different mechanics, do resonate on the same wavelength of thought, where their existence is purely miserable and not practical. What I mean by this is that Abriatus suffers from its size. A huge boss in a fast-paced game will inevitably mess up your camera, have ridiculous invisible hitboxes, and in turn prove to be a draining experience rather than an enjoyable one. At least the design is cool. Rom is a mob-spamming twat piece of shit, no enjoyment. But the daughter of the cosmos comes close.
Whatever happens, you may think it all a mere bad dream.
Aesthetically speaking, I think this game has one of the best worlds I've played in. I think the setting of Bloodborne absolutely justifies the existence of hunters, which is a great way of doing context-dependent storytelling without saying anything. The atmosphere thick with bloodlust from both beasts, humans and aliens? Yeah, this game gets a little weird, but I'll speak on that later. The best way I can describe the surrounding areas of the hunter's journey is by saying that the world leaves nothing to be desired. Even from the beginning of the game, everything you need to know is laid out perfectly, a horrific city where the line between man and beast is ever thin. With an intro like that, it is little surprise that the game captivated so many players on concept alone. The offering of a diverse array of areas keeps the linear style of game very fresh even as you proceed, each one offering terrifying critters with an apparent inspiration to HR Giga artwork, with the culmination of limbs being attached to a disgusting carcass. Standout areas for me definitely include the Cainhurst Castle, with its awe-inspiring moonlit architecture mixed with the harrowing screams of maids and murdering ghosts alike. I must say that this is definitely one of the most pure images I can think when describing the Bloodborne aesthetic to someone who hasn't played it. A pleasing yet creepy environment that has you running on the rooftops fighting gargoyles. The other area I think is in need of recognition is the beginning area of the Old Hunters DLC, The Nightmare, where you as the hunter are surprisingly greeted to the world of Bloodborne with sunlight instead of moonlight, giving an almost untrustworthy and false sense of security as you wander around encountering the hunters of old, trapped in their merciless mission, no longer recognizing the difference between duty and devour. Context and setting are arguably some of the most important aspects of a successful and engaging game. If the world you as the player occupy is boring or uninteresting, or doesn't even look good, then the enthusiasm of the player will wither away. Interest becomes disinterest because, well, why would you spend time in a place you don't like? A good example of a game that arguably follows this rule to its pinnacle is Ghost of Tsushima. A game I'm not particularly fond of for the gameplay or the story, but I can never trash this game's aesthetic and surrounding area. And Bloodborne does the same, in its more unique and disgustingly delightful way. Let's talk enemy designs because oh my giddy aunt are they sexy, and I don't mean that literally. This is a team full of people who absolutely love what they're doing and crank it up to 11 because wow, what a phenomenal job. If the area design wasn't good enough, now we have excellent enemy designs and mechanics too. It's like a wine and cheese pairing, and I actually understand the subtle notes. The clearly Redditor-inspired students in the second floor of the lecture building, the wacky inflatable arm-waving amygdalas scattered around, and the fisting of Fat Pig's anus for the visceral attack. For which, side note, it's obvious Red Dead 2 was inspired by this subtle detail. Some notable standouts are the weird townsfolk with the family of snakes spewing out of their heads. I think it is just inspired and actually a really appealing design to me. The enemy itself isn't anything special, but for some reason this design captivated me. Oh, and most importantly, these fish people in the fishing village. They are so goofy, it makes me laugh running through the area. Especially with this giant fish boy, he's so funny, I love it. And this is the charm of Bloodborne, really. All these wacky designs, and still they perfectly reflect the theme of the game and never pull you out of the atmosphere. It is amazingly executed. No matter which area of the game you visit, you will come across a brilliant design. Even one of the simpler ones like the townsfolk with their pitchforks and torches, yellowed beards and dirty clothing give a, and it's rather ironic to say for this game, but lived in and alive feeling? Where all of these horrors happening are just bad times creating strong people, if you will, who are fighting in their own methods, very derivative of the professional hunters we come across in the DLC. I did mention aliens earlier on in the video, and yeah, there are some. It's very funny to me that I made a HR Giga art comparison earlier in the video, and here I am speaking on the topic of aliens. How fitting. My theory is that the aliens started to control people into taking some form of liquid and turn them all crazy. Not too far-fetched, I suppose, but seriously, the aliens of the game are a mixed bag. I suppose now is a good time to talk about the bosses, and seeing how there is quite a few to talk about, I'm going to prioritize my attention on only the ones I have a bit more to say. So buckle up, because we're going to do a lightning round! Okay, let's see. The Witch of Hemwick, quite a boring boss actually. Well, I suppose it's a little bit interesting. I like the area with the prominence of women, but I suppose that has nothing to do with the boss. I'm just going to put a D tier. It wasn't very interesting. Vicar Amelia, on the contrast, very interesting boss actually. Amazing design, opens up a lot of the world after you defeat her. A tier. Bloodstaff Beast, I think it's a great skill check. Definite A tier. A really good design as well. I suppose the poison mechanic isn't that great for a lot of people, but I actually think it adds a bit of a risk-reward to the fight. Dark Beast Paul, I suppose it's quite interesting design-wise. Quite an underwhelming fight. I suppose unless you encounter it early, it is fairly simple. But because of design, I'll put out B tier. Father G, I think that would be definite B tier. Great introduction to the hunter fights in the game. Good way to learn the parry mechanic as well. Also, just great, like, side story for that. Murgo's Wet Nurse, C tier. Whilst the design is very, very cool, actually the fighting mechanics itself aren't that interesting. The bullshit with the teleports and the fog is can take you off guard a little bit, but it's nothing super special, in my opinion. Mikolash, dog shit, you have to chase him all the time. And say you actually die to him or one of the minions, you have to go through all that run again, and I don't mean just in the beginning, but after as well, in the second kind of stage for it. D tier, definitely. Moon Presence, quite an underwhelming secret boss, really cool design though. I'm going to put out C tier. Rom, D tier, just, you know, mob spamming, all the spiders around Rom make it a difficult fight, without it necessarily being a well-designed fight, so it's just tedious for the sake of being tedious. And just Rom, Shadows of Yharnam. You know, the gank in the game. I mean, ganks are never really well designed by FromSoft, but I remember struggling on this one a lot, getting stuck on it for a fairly long time actually. I'm going to put out C tier purely because they look like the ring wraiths from Lord of the Rings. The One Reborn, this one's difficult. Don't care for the fight necessarily, but one thing I do love is the design. It's so weird, with the legs slamming and it just being such a weird thing. Like, you know, you can kind of interpret it as the perfect creation by the things around it, so I'm going to put it out B just because of the looks. The fight is a bit bullshit with the people shooting from the sides, but whatever. Cleric Beast is most people's first boss, and while Father G taught you how to fight human enemies, the Cleric Beast introduced us to the other style of sacrilege we'll be hunting. Excellent first boss, very memorable, and hard enough to convey the message that there is no hand-holding when it comes to boss fights in this game. A strong A tier. Celestial Emissary gets merit on goofiness alone. A weak gang boss, but the way they move their arms makes it memorable, so it bumps it up. C tier. The amygdala is the part of the brain that's responsible for emotional processing, or a Bloodborne boss. To be honest, I cannot think of a more fitting way to name a boss in this game than to just name it after body parts. Really cool design, and its movement reminds me of the Babadook, Ato. I briefly touched on Abriatus at the start of the video, and to be completely honest, as I'm writing the script for this video, the boss has grown on me. Like, yes, I do think Abriatus has one of the worst hitboxes in the game, even surpassing Orphan's kidney sinew thing. But I suppose that is just down to its sheer size. I cannot deny that the design for this boss is extremely unique, and getting that perfect dodge timing on the charge is a great feeling, even though 99% of the time it's not possible. I'm debating a softer B, so I'll leave it there before I change my mind. Gammon is an interesting boss as he's one of the hunter bosses we encounter in the game, but compared to Marta Ligarius, Father G and Mikolash, he stands out as an extremely unique and super high octane fight, providing an unreal amount of pressure with his giant scythe swings and incredible speed. Where Father G was a great introduction to the mechanics of the hunter fights in Bloodborne, Gammon was the final exam. You do not get a breather with Gammon, you tense your cheeks and you lock in. Overall, this fight is very satisfying for a final boss, a gorgeous arena reminiscent of Sekiro's Swordsman Ishin arena, with the white flowers, and a badass design fitting for the hunter. An easy S tier.
Only an honest death will kill you now. From your wild curiosity.
Lady Maria is an alright boss. Yeah, so her arena is inside of a clock tower with the sun beaming through the decorative window, providing a fight in tight quarters with lighting I would almost call dusty, which I suppose is exactly the point because a corpse should be left alone. I cannot even pretend to not be excited when talking about this fight. I genuinely think Lady Maria is one of my favourite fights in the entire Souls series. I suppose if you learn her parry timing, she is fairly easy, but I like the more aggressive and bloody approach, so for me, Lady Maria has that pressure. I think as boss design goes, her moves are extremely fair, giving many openings after her combos finish. Later in the fight she gets her blood swords, extending her reach and swing, and then adds fire to them just in case you thought she wasn't cool already. A brilliant hunter fight, and boss fight in general. Once again an easy S tier. Living failures are a failure of a boss. Okay, maybe that's a little bit harsh, but they are a very boring precursor to one of the most fun fights in the game, like bread is in a restaurant before the meal. They are a very basic gank enemy where sometimes they swing their arms to hit you if you're close, and sometimes they shoot a Rasengan if you're far. The best part of this fight is obviously the meteor strike. Nothing special about this move apart from the visuals, but the stress seeing it for the first time is worth mentioning. Design wise they're rather mild to me, not really living up to the spice of some of the later kin enemies, even being more dull than the Celestial Emissary in my opinion. D tier. Ludwig the Holy Blade is an automatic S tier because it reminds me of the British person teeth meme. So let's talk about how maybe he can earn his right to remain in this tier. Well, to start, the design is phenomenal, no doubt about that. I would actually describe it as a cleaner, more polished version of the one Reborn, with more character and easier to identify traits, most notably the horse theme going on with Ludwig. A man who has deeply fallen into beasthood as reflected by his incomprehensible noises and movements around the arena. His second stage begins. A beautiful cutscene showing us arguably his most human feature, his eyes, staring at the holy blade impaled in his body, his humanity at the hilt of the sword. They really cooked with this cutscene. His second stage, while a visual spectacle, I actually found easier. Something about the sword made his movements more telegraphed and easier to predict, but I suppose that's the point, isn't it? A more calculated approach in his attack, where his beastly ferocity was replaced with a desperate series of swings from his blade. Top tier design, top tier cinematic, and a top tier moveset. Really, really good fight and a very solid S tier. This one is a little weird. Martyr Ligarius is a boss I actually have heard a few things about. How he's the optional hard boss of the game, like how Melania was for Elden Ring. A very difficult half spell, half combat focused boss, in which you fight on the rooftops of Canehurst. But to be completely honest, I was rather underwhelmed. All that hype and I managed to defeat him in my first attempt. Granted, I may have been a little over level for him, but A, I don't know what even would be a normal level, and B, I still expected more. I wonder if I got unlucky and somehow his move rotation got stuck on the easier ones because I went full pressure and he was, again, fairly easy. I suppose the design is cool and conceptually he's great, but from what I experienced, I actually will give him a B. My benefit of the doubt does come from the cool moves I did manage to see, and the raw adrenaline pumping through me when I ended up killing him on my first go. Lawrence the First Vicar is actually a very underrated boss. A big health bar with fire effect, and awesome creepy noises. A lot of people say this boss is just a reskin of Cleric Beast, but I disagree. While visually they look similar, bar the fire with Lawrence, I believe they are just of the same species, or curse I guess. Anyway, Lawrence offers a very fulfilling boss fight. Even though the boss is huge, when you don't lock onto the moves, they are still readable. But I didn't say easy. Yeah, the fire effect could be argued as a cheap way to increase the boss's difficulty, especially with the reskin allegations, but to be honest I think it makes the fight a lot more tense. And I have to talk about that second stage. Lawrence ever so desperate to stop you, even without his lower half he won't stop. This is a great phase transition that shows the desperate nature of the transformed Lawrence, crawling around fire everywhere with what appears to be a trail of molten lava following him. The one thing I do dislike is the constant jumping back in the first phase, but I suppose it's just because I have a full throttle playstyle. A high A tier for sure. Orphan of Kos, the final boss of the Old Hunters DLC. And what do I think of it? It's exceptional. Everything from design to gameplay is amazing. I am in awe at how much I actually ended up liking this boss. There is some jank with the hitbox on the kidney thing, but other than that, flawless. To speak on design, there's many artists I could refer to when describing what Orphan of Kos reminds me of. There's clearly been a lot of meticulous thought put into the overall design. Saying this is rather interesting as Orphan of Kos is both understated in the first stage and extravagant by its second stage. A humanoid looking alien thing with elements reminiscent of an old cadaver. The move so fast paced it matches up perfectly to a hack and slash playstyle where timing your dodges isn't to retreat to safety, but it's to close the distance and get right up in its face for maximum damage. The second stage too, my god, it flies now? Clearly Orphan gets a little pissy and goes a bit wacky with the moveset, getting some elemental AoEs as well as harder to track moves. All of this is to say that there is never a dull moment in this boss fight, and 99% of the time your defeat is a result of your own incompetence as the player, and not the unfairness of the boss. As much as I hate this term, skill issue is the best way of describing not being able to win this fight, and having to endlessly fight it over and over again just to get the timings right is extremely rewarding once you defeat it. My favourite boss in this game, and, well, my favourite boss in all Souls games now. Flawless design, an incredible moveset, and the most fun I've had playing this game. Top of S tier. I think that for a short summary, this video has been going on a little bit too long, but there are certain intricacies I had to point out in this game. Until now, I never understood why players would hail this game as the greatest creation since the Bible, but I think I get it now. This game has seriously warped my perception of the Souls-like genre. Even with the lack of a modern 60 FPS performance, this game has actually never felt outdated to me, more so like a classic. Everything this game offers is unique to itself, and while it takes Souls elements from its predecessors, I think Bloodborne, much like Sekiro, exists in a vacuum. This is a game which has earned its praise. However, I must say the overall experience of Bloodborne has been heavily carried by the DLC. You probably noticed a lot of the higher rated bosses, for example, did actually come from the Old Hunters, and many points of praise I have are due to the amazing passion of the people behind the studio who truly built up from what they already created. I will clarify that I did really enjoy the base game, so much so I bought the DLC for it before I ever finished it. Knowing how these Souls games incorporated their extra content, I knew this was okay. The concept of the hunters, the lore or what I understood from it, the design of the hunter to the limited yet extremely detailed and spine-curdling array of weaponry, all the way to the enemy design and setting, all so gorgeous and unique. Yet there was a catch: the bosses. Without the DLC it still stands very strong and I really did enjoy it, but showing me how they could expand on the world and show me what perfection really meant, I fell in love. Bloodborne is, in my opinion, the best Souls game FromSoft has ever produced. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. Give me your thoughts in the comments if you agreed with what I had to say, or was I completely off on some of my points? And if you really didn't enjoy anything I had to say, well, you may consider it all a mere bad dream.